All right, the old 14-inch Ford 9-inch diff. So it's held on, the axles are held in by a retaining plate, which is held on by 4 nuts. Now, I've preempted this a bit. I've already done the other 3. Get the old rattle gun in there. God, where were these things years ago? How good are they? So now from there, as you can see, it's already coming out. The axle just comes out. Now, I really want to put the camera down as I take this thing out because I don't want to damage the seal. I'll probably replace it. I've already replaced it once before. I lie, twice before. So that's it. That's how you take an axle out of a 9-inch diff. You can see the studs here in the end of the housing going to the retaining plate. There's the bearings there, which look like they're probably leaking some grease, and they're a funny old thing, these 9 inches. But anyway, we'll pull the axle out and have a bit of a look at her. Righto, so got a little bit of time to come back into the shed. You're looking at one of the axles out of the 9-inch diff. I'm not sure if it's a left or right, but anyway, irrelevant. What's relevant is we've got the old bearing off. So that's what it looks like with it off. And this is what it looks like on. So you've got to get this off if you want to change your bearings like I needed to. The problem with the bearings I found is inner race was corroded on the outer bearing. So there's a bearing here and here, and these things are a double row ball bearing, and the race on the outside of the other one had failed, and I think it's probably the same in this one. You can hear it rattling away there. No good. So anyway, dodgy as, you do what I do at your own risk. Really dodgy, but it bloody well works, so let's just go with this. And I must admit, I've done this job before. So, how to get the bearing off? Well, you need to get this retainer off. And what I use to get the retainer off is my trusty imitation Dremel, bought from Woolworths many years ago, of all places. And I cut into the retainer ring. Now, these retainer rings, hopefully this is coming up, these retainer rings are heat shrunk on. By that I mean they're an interference fit. They're slightly smaller than the axle they go onto, and to get it on you have to heat it up really hot. Like you'll need a blowtorch or a heat gun, better than a heat gun. So I'll show you something about that later, but I think I used a gas burner last time and just cooked the thing, and then you can bang them onto place. But if you don't get it the first time, you're buggered. You're up for a new retainer. So when I'm cutting this in, you've got to be real careful. You don't want to damage the axle. So what I've done is I've cut in, and as I've cut in, feel free and cut into the bearing. What do you care? It's going in the bin anyway. All right, so you can get it down as close as to the axle as you can without touching the axle, and go all the way in. Then, decent cold chisel. Once you've cut the groove, sledgehammer it down, make sure you wear a face shield, all right? And what happened with the other one is that it didn't actually split. It actually stretched enough that it came loose, and I got it off without it actually cracking. Now, I have heard in the past people doing this, and they've had them explode. I don't know, I've not seen it myself, but do it at your own risk, and wear a face shield. So I think I can probably, yep, there's the old one there. Should have taken it out. So as you can see, it didn't actually pop all the way, but it came off loose as a goose in the end. Right, so I've cut into it with the Dremel, down as far as I can get, and then smacked it with a cold chisel, and off she come. Then, to get the bearing off, you'll need to come in through the access hole here, nice soft drift, move the plate, the retaining plate, out of the way. Right, so this has got quite a lot of play in it, and you can get the drift under the gap between the axle and the retaining plate. Right, this is what holds the whole axle assembly in, and then get to the inner race of the outer bearing. So, you know, I'm trying to show it now. It's probably looking really amateurish, but anyway, but in through there, and just bang away, nice soft, and off it came. Anyway, I'll get to the next step. Okay, so there's our cut. You should be able to see there, you can see that it hasn't gone down to the axle. I've gone into the bearing, that's going in the bin. Right, and now we can get our cold chisel down like that and give it a good belt. I use a small sledgy, nice good dead blows on it, and solid blows on it, and I should let go. Don't forget your eye protection. Righto, there it is, easy done. So, a few pops, and look at that, she's off. No worries at all. It didn't crack. We've got no damage to the axle, beautiful. Now, I should have explained the clamp and, you know, a bit of metal. It just happens to be an old shackle. We're just essential, just for keeping this reasonably parallel, or horizontal, I beg your pardon, to the vise. And it allowed me to give it a good old whack without it coming loose. I tried it without it and the axle nearly fell off. So there we go, that's off. And then I'll just, like I said, come in from behind, knock the bearing out, job's done. Righto, back at it. So, where are we up to? Last night I managed to, I don't know if this is going to show up, but anyway, paint this section of the floor with the underfloor paint, and I've lost a bit of sleep due to my own laziness because I haven't taken that panel off there, and really that's just laziness. That's the bump stop for the diff center bump, and I need to remove that, clean up underneath it, stop being so lazy, and get that done as well. I'm not sure if I showed this before, but the exhaust system, even though it's not that old in kilometres wise, she's knackered, so I don't know if you can see down in there. Maybe you can, you can't, I think you can. It's just corroded out. So again, 10 years in the tropics, this car, and it just didn't do it any justice at all. So I'm pretty happy the way the paint come up. The way I've cleaned that up is predominantly using one of these wire brushes. Beg your pardon, my wife did most of this, not I. For the crevices, got into it with that little brush. Then Scotch-Brite and kerosene, and then finally some wax and grease remover. Wiped it down, and this is what I'm using here, brush on body deadener. I don't know if you could actually call this paint. It's thick. It's just like tar, seriously. You don't sort of so much as dip the brush in as scoop it in. But anyway, appears to be a pretty good finish. I'm reasonably happy with that. So, other things that are happening. So, bits and pieces on the diff. These are the dust guards, you want to call them. I don't know what you want to call them, but both of them have got issues. Hopefully the light, oh geez, I'm trying to hold light and hold the camera. I need a headset for this camera. Anyway, we'll get there. So this was broken off. I don't know if you're going to see that. So I was going to weld that back on, and the other one's also cracked in the same spot. My bad, first time I took it off, just impatient, so lesson learnt. Welder, got that set up for 0.6 wire to do that. I use a Lincoln. I've had 3 welders, another lesson in life. This is a good one. I bought a couple of cheapies. Poor man pays twice. So no, I've been able to get some reasonable welds using that welder. What are we going to do with that? Just clean it up, respray paint that blue. That's how I got it. We'll go out and have a look at the diff housing in a minute. Get to the springs later. Where are we at? Now, interesting note. I don't know if it's going to show up again on the camera. This is the Ford manual. Under no circumstances is the bearing to be removed from the axle shaft. Should the bearing replacement become necessary, a new axle shaft with a factory fitted bearing must be used. Not really. So I've done this before very successfully. So the way the bearings are fitted, these slide on, brass drift on to the, what do you want to call their machine surface there, right? And they're held into place by these retainers. Now, I think I filmed how I took the other one off with a Dremel and a cold chisel. I've seen films in America, they use a drill bit and people just using cold chisels, whatever. They have to come off. And then I've measured this up with my vernier this morning. The outside of this is 2 thou bigger than the inside of the retainer. So in other words, it's called an interference fit. Going back to my school days, I thought it was only a half to a thou, but look, I don't have the world's best vernier. So that's what's got to happen here. So what you do is you heat this up. All right, so it's a bit of a process, because you don't want to just put this down onto that and get it to remain, like with the heat that you're going to need to get this to expand to go over this. You don't want that heat sitting against that bearing for any period of time. So have a hose standing by. See how I've done it? It could be wrong. There's no direction in the book, clearly. So you just need to get yourself prepared. I've just got a big piece of tube somewhere. There he is here. Right, that goes over the axle. And I'll use a bit of aluminium to put the axle onto, so the face doesn't get damaged, because you're going to beat the living crap out of this thing to get it on. I was incorrect in thinking that I had to remove all this to take the discs off. It's not the case. A bit of a reread of the book last night. These plates are actually designed so that you can weave the caliper through like so to get your disc off once you've knocked your stubs out in situ. So last time I did it with the stubs in and the disc on. I won't do that today. Read in the book. That's what that's meant to do. So it feeds in there while it's on the shaft. I've had a go of it. It does work, so hopefully I can get my disc back on. But this sits and floats, you know, up to this shoulder here. So you've got that much room to play with. It'll be a bit fiddly, but rather be banging, you know, this retainer on. Let me tell you, this takes a fair old whack to get down. You want to make sure that that bearing is hard on that shoulder there, and this is hard on that shoulder there. You know, you don't want that walking back off. See, this has got to be done right. Let's have a look at that bearing there. I wonder if it goes one way. I've not seen that before. It's got a bit of a chamfer on it. I would suggest that that probably goes in to assist it going into the housings here. So these disc brake ones have a different housing to the drum brake ones. These are an extension. So just looking at that, I've just noticed that. The other bearings didn't have that on the casing. I'll take that as that's in and that's out, so it'll go on that way. No, it won't. Back to front blue. The chamfer will go in towards the diff, so it'll sit in. Anyway, we'll get to that later. So some progress there. Bits and pieces painted up, getting some progress finally. I need to get the car off the hoist because I've got to work on my other cars. So just coming out here just quickly. Oh great, the wind. Right, so I've painted the diff. Hopefully that's not too... No, I'm going to have to redo that. Wind's picked up this morning and I've just got a little... going to have to redo that. But anyway, again, wire brush, Scotch-Brite terps, and then Prepsol or wax and grease remover, whatever you want to call it. And that's just what do I use this time? White Knight rust guard, and in gloss, and it's come up pretty good. I think it looks all right. So I'm just going to have to retouch where the wind's blowing the paper up onto me housing there. But that's all right. It's, you know, it's a diff. It doesn't have to look that pretty. So on. Hi. Okay, we're on. So Jodie's filming now. So what we're going to do is a couple of things. We're going to put the retaining rings on the axles, which are a shrink fit like I described before. So these things on my vernier at the moment are 2/1000 of an inch less than the actual shaft they're going on. So we're going to have to heat them up, expand them, and that's why I've got the job set up. A couple of bricks so we can burn that away and without harming anything. Now these things here, these are the copper washers which are used for the 9-inch diff, and they use copper washers for the retaining nuts because they're a seal. Now, an old aviation practice, which doesn't happen anymore, shouldn't, is to anneal these. So what you do is you heat them up to their cherry red and then quench them by the book. You're supposed to do it in oil, then you use, then you wash them clean, blah, blah, blah.
Stop.
Look, the screen has, no, it keeps going, don't worry about that. My wife's using a GoPro and it's interesting. The screen disappears, it's okay. We can continue, it's fine, buddy.
Well, how do I know what I'm taking
You
a
don't,
picture
it's
of?
flashing red at me, GoPros, right? This will look good on YouTube.
Oh, you just press it and it comes
this
back.
This will look awesome. Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Who knew that?
Yeah.
All right. So, we're going to anneal these to make them soft. You anneal them to make them soft so you can reuse them. It's, you know, it's been a practice that's been around for a very long time. So I thought I'd just demonstrate that. The job's set up, so we've got the tap there. As soon as we get these rings banged on and in position, I will quench it with water because we don't want the heat soak going into the plastic surrounds for the roller bearing on the inside closest to the ring, because this is going to be bloody hot. Pipe to knock it on with, and the aluminium, that's a bit off an old a boat actually, but anyway, sacrificial, so we're not going to damage the bottom of the axle on concrete. Really wouldn't matter, but it's just an added precaution. Righto, let's get underway. You can see it's going cherry red already. I've already done the other ones, that's the main one I want to do. So copper's really easy to heat up. There we go, they're well and truly hot enough. Excuse the fire. And that's it. So that's annealing, and they're soft enough to reuse now. Instead of buying new ones, check them on eBay. Some people want stupid money for them, but anyway. Alright. Important bit.
I don't know when it's hot enough.
Well, I can get the verniers and actually measure it, but it's not going to get red hot, not with this. Starting to change colour there, so that's an indication.
Riveting.
Yeah. Sure you're loving it. Alright. Let's try that. I'll move reasonably quickly. And that is home.
Yeah.
Yep, alright, tap.
Oh, really got your plumber's cracked in.
Yeah, have a good look.
Don't touch it.
Should be cool enough now. So yeah, it's well and truly on. I've remembered from one of my previous footages, that bearing's nice and tight. So still a bit warm. Put some more water on it, but I can touch with my finger, so it's all right. So yeah, it's well and truly in. Job done. Well, heat another one up and do it.
Do you want me to keep filming the next one?
No, I don't think we need to do two, bub. Cheers for that. Bye bye now. Righto, moving right along. So been a bit of progress obviously since last time. So springs are in, gave them a bit of a paint, and so now I'm just doing the axle seal after much umming and ahhing, more umming than ahhing. I decided that I am going to change the axle seals. Sorry, I should have prepped that. Oh, I have, but I don't know where to put it. Anyway, so new axle seals. I'll just put one here. Idiot, there it is. Right. There it is there. So I've just taken one out, and again, this little air axle, I tell you, you need one of these. Hi baby, how you going? So what I did with that, it's gone flinging over my head. Geez, I haven't prepped this one well today, but anyway. So air axle, as you can see, I've cut 2 slots into there, but not gone into the axle housing. You've got to be really, really careful. And obviously don't let the blade, thanks bub, don't let the blade, she just touched the screen so I can see what I'm filming, don't let the blade go into the housing. So you've got a nice little area here, you can just cut down, didn't damage anything, and once you've cut down here, it was just a matter of a lever, and it just flicked out over my head. Job done. So now I've got to put a new one in. I've had this for 15 years. This is one of the old axle retainers that I've taken off in the past, but it didn't come apart when I got it off. So this is ideal for installing. As you can see, it's exactly the same diameter. So what I'll do is I'll put some goop around here, because they do tend to leak through those little grooves in the housing here. So use some RTV sealant or ultra copper, ultra blue, whatever. And they do have sealant on them, but I've found in the past it doesn't necessarily do the job. So I'll put some sealant around here. We'll place it in, put the ring around it, and then a nice big socket and a, what have I done with that? There it is over there. Oh, I can, it's all good. Is a good use of an old 1/2-inch extension, by the way. Old cheap one, I bought it at the market some time ago, about 20 years ago, and it's just a cheapie, but gee, I tell you what, handy, because it goes into the back of the socket. It's a sacrificial piece, they're pretty soft, and I can use that on that to create a nice little drift to whack our seal in. So that's what we're going to do. Cheers. Okay, quick add on to the last film. Forgot to mention, when I cut that with the air hacksaw, I shoved the rag obviously in the axle housing. You don't want any swarf getting in there. Another little tip I use to make sure that the seal is nicely up against its shoulder inside, I just use a mirror. You might be able to see that, I'm not sure. Little dentist mirror, handy as these things. And just had a look around all the way around, and I can see that the seal housing is nicely up against the shoulder inside the diff there. So, and I can also see that my goop sealant has got a nice little bead all the way around. So I've got an extra assurance that we're not going to get bypass of oil from the outer bit of that housing, which I've had happen in the past. What else have we done? So obviously springs back in, new white line bushes in there. I mentioned before, I didn't mention before, I welded the brackets onto the chassis and the differential for the sway bar. That was all just bolted before. And the reason I did that is because the kit that I bought some years ago only has one bolt hole in it for the chassis, and it only goes this way. These two holes are just for the brace, I guess, what do you want to call it, the link to the sway bar itself. But the factory one it uses these two holes. Now this car, when I bought it, had a airlift suspension on it, old school, not some of the new stuff you see hanging around. And these bolt holes weren't utilised. And going through the book, it actually had a factory tow kit fitted, and I wonder if that's what they did. But it was a airbag suspension, so airbags with a coil spring around it, and there was all sorts of different things that I'd not seen before. And these holes weren't utilised. Well, they're the ones for the sway bar. So what I've done, I've just done half decent. Well, I'm talking that one up. So I've just welded in place, because before it was just held on by that one bolt, and it's just not good enough. So anyway, there we go. That should all be a bit more solid. New shackle pins as well at the back, because the other ones were just rusty as buggery. And these bushings are Super Pro here and here. That's white line there, and you know, I'm hoping the car just feels a lot more solid in the arse end, because it used to wiggle around a little bit. So we'll see how she goes. Cheers. Righto, time for another quick update. So the park brake cable turned up. I can't remember if I mentioned that before, but anyway, we've got it fitted up. Pretty happy with that. Just cleaned these parts up, just in the parts washer. Gave the spring a bit of a paint job. Didn't really need to, but anyway, just to make it look a little nicer. Note that, gee, last time, the last park brake cable was so stretched, it was right up here. The nut was right up here, so we're all the way back here now. 5 clicks and the wheels are stopping, so the park brake's working good. Remember, we rebuilt the calipers, so pretty happy with that. The other thing is, I filled the diff up with oil, and gee, I did that about a month ago. It's been a while since I've done an update, and we've got no leaks, so pretty happy with that. And the floor is now painted, so pretty happy with that. You know, it's come up pretty good. I've stopped here, just where the gearbox is, because I'll rip the motor and gearbox out as soon as I can, and I'll paint forward once I start doing other work forward on the car. So next thing is I'm going to re-weld this quarter. I'm not happy with the first job I ever did, so like I think I mentioned before, this area in here is old metal, and you can sort of see the weld line. I'm just rubbing the torch down there. This is a rare spares panel, which has that end piece. So I'll cut the other one out again and redo this. So next thing is just to whip the bumper bar off so we can get to it all properly, mark it up and cut it off.